Here's what you need to know about the speaking test. For starters, you'll complete 8 different speaking tasks. You'll also have a short practice task at the beginning, but it's not rated. In each speaking task, you'll have a preparation time, then a recording time. If you're gonna remember one thing from this video, it's that you don't need to speak during the preparation time. This time is just to help you plan your response. In fact, you'll be given notepaper and a pen during the test to help you with this. You don't have to take notes if you don't want to, but it's something to keep in mind. Okay, so after the preparation time is the recording time. You should speak during this part. This is what you're rated on. The preparation times vary from 30 to 60 seconds, and recording times vary from 60 to 90 seconds, but you'll have about 20 minutes in total to complete the speaking test. Something else to consider is that 4 of the rated speaking tasks only include text. The other 4 include text and images. A number of the speaking tasks also require you to speak directly to the computer, as though it were another person. Each task requires a slightly different approach, so the bottom line is that it's good to know some of these differences beforehand. This was just a quick overview of the speaking test. If you'd like to get more familiar with the format, scoring, and types of questions on the test, why not try out our 2 online sample tests? They're free, so why not? You can also purchase some online practice tests. In addition to completely different questions in each of these tests, they also give you sample responses for writing and speaking from real test takers at different CELPIP levels. And of course, you'll learn about the speaking test in much more detail throughout the rest of this CELPIP Accelerate course.
In this video, let's discuss the categories and factors that raters consider. As I mentioned, all responses are scored according to the same rating scale. We're going to look at a simplified version of the scale called the performance standards. This chart is also available on our website, and we encourage test takers to get familiar with it so that they can prepare for the test with full knowledge of the scoring criteria. We'll also discuss various aspects of this chart in further videos throughout CELPIP Accelerate. The rating scale is divided into 4 categories, or dimensions. The dimensions are content and coherence, vocabulary, listenability, and task fulfillment. Within each dimension are 4 individual factors that are considered. Raters assess each dimension separately, so it's possible to do well in some and less well in others. It's essential to understand that none of the 4 is most or least important to your score. They're all very important. For most test takers, focusing only on one dimension or a factor or 2 within a dimension is not an effective strategy for preparing for CELPIP. Let's look at content and coherence first. In this dimension, the raters are determining how well your ideas are organized and developed. The 4 factors they consider in this dimension are number of ideas, quality of ideas, examples and supporting details, and organization of ideas. When a test taker hears number of ideas, they often want to know, how many ideas should I have? Well, there's no answer to that question because raters never count how many ideas there are in a response. What they do think about is whether all of the ideas are different, that there is little or no repetition of ideas, and whether there are enough ideas that the response feels complete and developed. Related to this, raters consider the quality of the ideas. Are they meaningful? Are they clear? Are they expressed precisely? And looking at the 3rd factor, are they supported with relevant examples and details? Finally, the 4th factor refers to the coherence element of the dimension, organization of ideas. Is the response easy to follow? Are the ideas presented in a logical order? The second dimension is vocabulary. In this dimension, the raters think about the range of your vocabulary and whether you can use it naturally. The first factor is word choice. It probably doesn't come as a surprise that it's important to choose language that effectively expresses your meaning. The next factor is suitable use of words and phrases. Raters look for language that applies to the situation and is used correctly. The third factor, range of words and phrases, concerns your ability to use a wide variety of words. Some strategies you can use here are to avoid repeating the same words or phrases over and over. Paraphrase information from the question instead of copying it, and expand on the content of the question with specific descriptive details. The final aspect of the vocabulary dimension that raters take into account is precision and accuracy. They will be looking for words and phrases that express meaning as clearly and concisely as possible. They'll reflect on whether you're using common phrases accurately and using correct collocations. CELPIP is a test of everyday English, but everyday doesn't equal vague, awkward, or repetitive. Effective communication in everyday life requires making a consistent effort to use context-appropriate, varied, natural, and precise language. The third dimension is listenability. Test takers sometimes assume that this is the most important dimension, but again, this is not the case. Listenability concerns how intelligible and fluent your speech is. How easy is it to listen to your response and understand it? The first important factor that raters consider here is rhythm, pronunciation, and intonation. Rhythm relates to the stress and the pace of your speech. Pronunciation is your ability to produce individual sounds correctly. And intonation is the rising and falling of your voice, which communicates a great deal of meaning in English. Raters never penalize a speaker simply for having.
One of the things that the raters are looking for is how well you are able to follow instructions on the speaking test. So it's really important to read the instructions carefully. It may seem like pretty obvious advice, but a lot of test takers don't do as well as they could on the speaking test because they misunderstand the instructions or because they lose time thinking about what exactly the instructions are asking them to do. The tricky part about some of the instructions in the speaking test is that sometimes they ask you to do more than one thing. And sometimes they may give you a couple of options, but require you to choose one. In these two videos, we'll go through all 8 tasks of the speaking test and take a close look at the instructions of each task. In this video, we'll look at the instructions in speaking tasks 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the next video, we will look at speaking tasks 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let's start with an example of task 1, giving advice. Here are the instructions. Your friend was hired for a position at a software development company. Since she only recently graduated from university, this will be the first job she has ever had. Give her advice on how she should prepare for her first day at work. Note that in this case, your friend just got a job. It's her first, and she needs some advice about her first day at work. This isn't someone looking for a job. It's someone who already has a job and needs advice about her first day. You should also note that the instructions are to give her advice. This means that you should speak as if talking directly to your friend. You might start off by saying something like, "Hey, Lisa, I heard you got your first job. Congratulations. I've got some advice about getting ready for your first day in the office." What would not be correct in this situation would be to say something like, "If my friend got her first job, I would tell her to," because here I am not speaking directly to my friend, and the instructions say, give her advice. Sometimes when we are feeling nervous on a test, it's easy to read instructions quickly and assume we know what we are supposed to do. Take the time to slow down and really pay attention to the details. Here's task 2, talking about a personal experience. Let's look at the instructions in this example. Talk about a time when you acted as a leader. Maybe you can talk about taking on a leadership role in a family, school, or company activity. What was the activity? How did you lead others? And what was the final result? Let's look at that last sentence more carefully. What was the activity? How did you lead others? And what was the final result? Note that you have to do 3 things here. You have 60 seconds of speaking time in task 2. So if you got a question like this, you'd have to give yourself about 20 seconds for each of these 3 parts. Okay, let's take a look at another example. This one is from task 3, describing a scene. Here the instructions read, describe some things that are happening in the picture below as well as you can. The person with whom you are speaking cannot see the picture. Let's look at that last bit again. The person with whom you are speaking cannot see the picture. This is an important point to remember when describing any of the pictures on the speaking test. When you are describing the image in speaking tasks 3, 4, and 8, remember that the listener cannot see the image. This means that your description will have to be very clear. Let's use this image as an example. If I start off by saying, the woman is talking to the boy, it would be very difficult for the listener to imagine what I am talking about. But if I remember that the listener cannot see the image, I will be more careful to build an accurate picture in the mind of the listener. I may start off by describing the post office and mentioning that the woman and the boy are off to the left side, probably talking about the money that the boy is holding. In task 4, you will see the same image as in task 3, but this time the instructions read, in this picture, what do you think will most probably happen next? Here, you aren't being asked to describe what is happening now. You need to make a prediction about what will happen in the immediate future. For example, you may say, the woman in the line will approach the counter. Okay, so far we've taken a look at the instructions in speaking tasks 1, 2, 3, and 4. Try the quiz after this video and then go on to the second part, in which we'll look at the instructions in tasks 5, 6, 7, and 8. In this video, we are going to take a look at the instructions in speaking tasks 5, 6, 7, and 8. Remember, the raters are paying close attention to how well you will follow the instructions. Sometimes test takers lose points because they don't read the instructions carefully enough. Let's take a look at task 5 now. We need to really pay attention to the instructions here. In task 5, you are comparing 2 things and making a choice as to which one is better. But you will also be asked to persuade someone of your choice. For the first step, comparing, you will have 60 seconds to study 2 pictures and some information about the things in those pictures. All you need to do here is think about which one is better and click on your choice. You will then see a screen in which your selection will be presented alongside another choice made by someone else. You will have 60 seconds to prepare your response, in which you will have to explain why your choice is better. Remember, you are trying to persuade the person who made the other choice that yours is the better option. So remember to speak directly to that person. If the instructions say, persuade your friend that your choice is better, don't say, I would tell my friend that. You should say something like, hi, Bill, let me tell you why I think my choice is better. There's one more thing we need to keep in mind about speaking task 5. Remember that you're being asked to compare 2 things and persuade someone that your choice is better. That means you will have to talk about the differences between those 2 things, why one is better or worse than the other. Some test takers make the mistake of just describing 2 things without making a comparison between them. Let's look at an example to illustrate this point. Here, there are 2 forms of accommodation, a hostel and a bed and breakfast. If I say, the hostel costs $17 per night and the bed and breakfast costs $120 per night, then I am not really saying why one is better or worse. Also, I have not expressed which choice I prefer. I am just stating the information provided on the screen. However, if I say, I think the hostel is a much better choice. The hostel is much cheaper than the bed and breakfast. Then I am clearly expressing my preference, and I am explaining why one is better than the other by saying that it is cheaper than the other option. Here, not only am I showing the raters that I understand the instructions, but I am also showing the range of my vocabulary by using my own words to persuade someone that my choice is better. In task 6, dealing with a difficult situation, you will have to choose between 2 possible scenarios. Let's look at an example. You are the office supervisor and you notice that water has leaked all over the kitchen floor. It needs to be cleaned right away, but Sasha, the employee responsible for this, is just leaving to meet a friend for lunch, and she doesn't want to cancel it. She asks her coworker, David, to clean the floor instead, but David refuses. Choose one. Either explain to Sasha why she should change her lunchtime, cancel lunch with her friend, and clean up the floor, or explain to David why he should clean up the floor for Sasha. So here you are choosing one option. It doesn't matter which one you pick. Just go with the one that is easier for you to talk about. In task 7, you'll be asked to express your opinion about a topic. The important thing to remember about task 7 is that you must explain your reasons for your opinion. To explain your reasons, you will need to provide details and examples that will support your opinion. Let's look at an example. Do you think that young people should travel often and learn from other cultures before taking their first job? Explain your reasons. So in this case, it's not enough to say something like, yes, I think young people should travel a lot before taking their first job. You need to explain your reasons by providing supporting details, such as travel will expand their minds and teach them to be tolerant of people from different backgrounds. Travel will allow young people to have firsthand experience of places they have only read about. They may learn new ways of doing things that will benefit them in their future careers. So here I have not only expressed my opinion, I've explained my reasons by providing lots of details to support that opinion. Okay, on to task 8. In speaking task 8, describing an unusual situation, you may be asked to do more than just describe something. Let's look at this example. The instructions are, you see some people playing a game in the park, and you call your friend Adam to tell him about it. Describe in detail what the game is about and ask Adam if he is interested in joining the game with you. In this case, you have to describe this strange game, but you also have to ask Adam if he is interested in joining in. Again, if you get a question like this that asks you to do more than one thing, make sure you leave yourself enough time to complete all that you're asked to do. So the main point here is, as you go through the speaking test, take the time to read the instructions carefully. You will have between 30 and 60 seconds to prepare your response for each task. Use that time to consider exactly what you are being asked to do and plan how you will do it.
Here's what you need to know about the listening test. You'll have one unscored practice task at the beginning, and then you'll be scored on 6 different parts. You may see additional items as well. Huh? These additional items are unscored, and they're just for research and development purposes. Altogether, you'll have just under an hour to complete the listening test. Each listening part is different from the others in some way, but they do have some things in common. Every question on the listening test is a multiple choice question with 4 options. Each listening clip is either a conversation between 2 or 3 people or a short report about something delivered by a single speaker. One of the parts has a video. That one features a conversation between 3 people. Something else that all the parts have in common is a next button. This button is there so that you can skip to the next part before the time is up. You don't have to click next to move forward in the test. When your time is up, the test will automatically move to the next part. Don't be too quick to click next once you finish a listening part. Once you do that, you can't go back, and you won't be able to carry over the extra time. So the only benefit to clicking next before your time is up is that your listening test will end sooner. If you have any time left over after answering a question, you might want to use it to check over your answer. And lastly, you'll hear all the audio only once, so be sure to pay attention. To help you out with this, you'll be given note paper and a pen during the test. You don't have to use them, but making notes, especially during the tougher listening parts, might really help. This was just a quick overview of the listening test. When you take the listening test, you'll be provided with notepaper and a pen so that you can take notes during the test. If you need more notepaper during the test, just put up your hand and ask for it. You don't have to take notes, but it can really help you remember and organize the information you hear during the test. In the next 7 videos, you'll learn about note-taking and how this skill can really help you on the listening test. In video 2, you'll learn some general note-taking strategies, using listening part 1 as an example. In the subsequent videos, we'll focus on note-taking strategies that are specific. Before we start, I want to let you know that you're going to have a chance to take your own notes a little later in this video. If you'd like, you can pause the video right now and get some notepaper and a pen. Okay, are you ready? Before we get into specifics for each part, let's cover some basic note-taking strategies. If you haven't done a lot of this before, you might be wondering how to get started. How do you organize your notes? Well, different people prefer different layouts, so the bottom line is that you should take notes in whatever way is most comfortable for you. But right now, we're going to make a chart because that's an easy way to clearly divide ideas on the page. You should also try and take notes in point form. This will make things way easier and a lot quicker. You don't have to write in full sentences. In each listening part, there are some things we know even before the audio starts. In listening part 1, for example, we know that there will be 2 speakers, a man and a woman. So we can add that to the chart. What else can we add? Prior to listening, we're presented with an image that will give us some information about the general context of the conversation. Here, we see a woman at a desk talking to a man. They could be in a lobby or an office. Along with the image, we can see a brief statement about the dialogue. You will listen to a conversation between a male university student and a woman who works in student services. Now we know that the conversation is taking place at the student services department of a university, and the speakers are a male student and a female student services worker. It's good to keep in mind that note-taking is all about making things easier for yourself. If I wanted to save a bit of time, I could even shorten my notes like this. Remember that the conversation in listening part 1 is divided into 3 parts. To clarify your notes, you could even split your page into 3 sections like this. It's also good to note that the questions in each of the 3 parts only refer to the dialogue of that respective part. In other words, the questions for the 3rd part of the conversation will only refer to the 3rd part, not the 1st part. One last thing before we begin. When you take notes, listen for the main ideas and key words of the conversation. Don't just write down every word you hear. In listening part 1, one speaker helps another speaker with a problem. In this case, what is the student asking the woman at student services? What's the main issue here? Let's find out. Okay, here we go. We're going to listen to the first part of the conversation. As you listen to the audio, watch what sort of notes I make.
Hello, I'm a new student. Is this where I come to get my locker?
Yes, but you have to rent one. It's not included in your student fees.
Oh, it isn't? How much does it cost?
$20 per semester for a half-size locker, $30 for a full-sized.
I see. Okay, I'll rent a full-size one. I'll need it for my backpack, my books, my jacket.
Where would you like your locker?
I don't really know.
Well, where are most of your classes? Most students choose a locker close to where they spend most of their time. Some students want a locker in the athletic complex. Others want it near the library.
Oh, in the humanities building, please. Most of my classes are there, and it's beside the library. I only have 1 class in the psychology building, and I don't think I'll be using the athletic complex much.
Okay, I'll give you number 2894 for now. But why don't you go take a look? And if there's another one you'd rather rent, just write down the number, come back, and we'll make the switch.
All right, let's have a quick look. You'll notice that my notes are pretty short. None of them are full sentences, and it's even okay if the grammar isn't perfect. And oops, I even made a couple spelling mistakes. That's totally fine. As long as your notes help you organize your thoughts, that's all that matters. Remember that you're not being scored on your notes. They're just to help you out. Now here's a question from this part of the conversation. Remember that in listening parts 1, 2, and 3, you don't read the question, you only hear it. Why has the man come to the woman? I know from my notes that the man wants information about his locker. Lockers are a type of facility at universities, so B, to get information about facilities, is the correct answer. Now let's listen to the next section of the conversation. This time, I won't make any notes during the audio. Instead, try to make your own notes on a piece of paper. After the audio is finished, we'll compare. Ready to begin?
Hello again. I went to locker number 2894, but there's no lock on it.
Oh, yes, you'll need to buy your own.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You can buy one at the bookstore or any hardware store.
Does it have to be a certain kind of lock?
No, most students prefer combination locks, but some like the kind that takes a key. The bookstore sells the combination kind.
I'd better get a combination one. I'd lose the key within a week. Is the bookstore open right now?
Yes, until 4. And about those keys, you usually get 2, but I know what you mean. I'd lose my head if it weren't attached to my body.
What sort of notes did you take? Did you find it easy or difficult to identify the main ideas? Now let's compare. Did you write down any of the same notes? You should have noted that the main idea here was that the man's locker didn't have a lock, so he came back to student services to ask about it. You probably also noticed that some of my notes contain images. That's also fine. Images can be even quicker to jot down. Just do whatever you're most comfortable with. Here's a question for this part. Why has the man returned to student services? We know from our notes that the man still needs a lock, so C, he needs a lock for his locker, is the correct answer. Okay, so in this video, we've discussed the main note-taking strategies, using listening part 1 as an example. In the next 5 videos, we're going to talk about the differences between the other listening parts that you should be aware of as you set up your notes. In the final video, we're going to do a brief summary about everything we've discussed.
$400 का फर्क पड़ रहा है। क्या 400 उस लास्ट में ये पिछला आ रहा है, ये 223 हमारा आ रहा है, पिछला 200 2352 2237 आ रहा है। 100 रुपए इसमें फर्क है और बाकी पता नहीं कैसे लिखे हैं, बहुत से नहीं मिलाओ। ये है उनका पर्ची, ये टोटल उनका तो दिया है, उनके हिसाब से 4620 हुआ।
हमारे हिसाब से
हो रहा है ये 4214 रुपया। ये जो पिछला इन्होंने लिखा 2300 वो
ये उनका है क्या?
हाँ उनका है। सुनो, ये 30 नवंबर तक का पिछला लिखा उन्होंने 2352 और हमारा आ रहा है 2237। ठीक है,
नहीं तो हम पेमेंट देखेंगे ना पापा की पेमेंट हमने लास्ट टाइम कितनी की थी।
इनको कहाँ किया नहीं पेमेंट, तो आप समझे नहीं। ये पेमेंट यहाँ लिखा हो गया 5500।
तो ये कहाँ से आ गया फिर?
अब पिछले का मतलब ये कहने का है कि ये नवंबर का है ना, तो नवंबर को उन्होंने अलग रखा, दिसंबर का अलग रखा।
अच्छा,
तो ये नवंबर का 30 कहाँ गया? 30 नवंबर तक का आता है 2237 और इन्होंने दिया है 2335।
मैं फोन करता हूँ।
इतना ये है, इसको पिछला नहीं है, ये तो आधा हो गया। पिछला मतलब नवंबर का
करता हूँ मैं फोन।
लो देखो क्या करना है।
You will watch a discussion among 3 people. There are 2 women and 1 man. They are at their weekly staff meeting. This is April. This is Lily. This is Tim.
I read an interesting article in a magazine last night. It was called The Long Tail, and it was based on a book with the same title. It compared businesses to a comet and gave advice for specialty businesses like ours.